Well, forget Generation X or Y. How about Generation Hooked? Whether you're talking X or Y, because not only are a record 57% of college students getting some form of aid, they're getting lots more in aid. Aid so daunting, the odds of ever paying it back are looking even more daunting. But it's not only government handouts hooking them in school, it's payback relief that's hooking them long after school. A sign we're a bit too indebted to a government just driving us all deeper in debt. Julie Roginsky says that it's a good thing the government's doing this because when it comes to education, it's providing opportunity for lots of folks. Scottie Hughes says it's a sin because it's costing all taxpayers. All right, so Scottie, you're not a fan of this. When 6 out of 10 college students are this much in debt and this much dependent on the government, not good?
No, it's not good, and especially when we're talking about $1 trillion in loans that are defaulted on at this point. 514 college institutions have a higher number of people defaulting on their loans than actually graduating. These are numbers that are not producing good education and basically just a chance for Obama to buy another generation of entitlement voters.
Okay, but I mean, I think, Julie, the one thing you could look at is I had student loans when I was a kid. I think that would be an opportunity for all kids. What I do argue, though, then and now, and I think this follows a mathematical argument, the more in loans education establishments like colleges, universities see you're getting, the more they feel they have room to hike prices.
I think it's absolutely right, and I think that's a problem. But the alternative to, and you're absolutely right in that creates a problem. The alternative to that, however, is that only rich people or the kids of rich people would be able to go to college. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go to college. It sounds like you would not have been able to go to college, and that's a problem because at the end of the day...
Well, what if you put a ceiling on the lending? Do you think you'd start seeing a ceiling on the tuition and room and board soaring?
You might, but actually I think a lot of these kids would then have to go to private institutions, not to Pell Grants or other college programs from the government, but they'd have to go to Bank of America, who could jack up the prices or jack up the interest rates a lot higher than the government could, and that creates a whole other problem. So,
but you do see that if you keep feeding the beast, it gets more beastly.
But you put a ceiling on what the government can give you, that's fine, but then you have to go to private lenders. It's not like mom or dad will be able to pick up the tab a lot of places. So I would have had to then go to Bank of America, for example, or whatever it was before it became Bank of America. And you know, because I'm ancient, and so the Bank of America didn't exist when I was in college.
Well, if you're ancient, I'm Methuselah.
Yeah.
All right,
so that's the problem.
But Scottie, your point is that we've got to do something. We could recognize the risk of those who need the aid not getting the aid, but the bigger risk longer term is no one gets aid and gets college because it'll be priced out, right?
That's completely right. And it's not like the Republicans are against education, but what's the real hypocrisy in all of this? Barack Obama is championing the students, supposedly, yet he's going to make $50 billion in profit just this year off the interest from these loans. So is he really doing this in the best interest of students? I think if we were sitting there and giving government grants just to make it equal so that we would have status quo, that would be fine. But I think this administration is using this basically to make a profit to make up for where they have their other losses, like in the mortgage rate business.
You're suggesting that other presidents didn't have Pell Grants or other loans that actually charge an interest rate, so you'd rather just give the money away? I'm not quite clear on how you think the government could lend money.
No, I'm not saying give the money, but I'm saying let's sit here and let's make it status quo. Let's not sit here and make a profit off our students and say that we're trying to help them like President Obama's trying to do.
Does that mean that you were you for keeping the rates forcibly low the way they were, or just let them be market-based rates the way a lot of Republicans were arguing?
Well, I'm market-based rates, but I want to make sure that we're not subsidizing them by taxpayer funds, which is kind of what's also happening in a lot of these cases these days. I want to make sure that we're making smart investments like we would make a smart investment in any stock. Make sure that these students are actually going to stay in. They're not going to be in for a year or two and then default on their loans, hence the $1 trillion
but I'm confused.
Well, I don't want to go down that now. I will say this, and this is open to conjecture with anyone, guys, but I do think that we ought to put more emphasis on just trade schools and electricians and plumbers, because I don't know about you, my plumber has people.
My plumber employs more people than your plumber, because I live in New York.
You need to make an appointment.
I know. But
you need to make an appointment.
So I'm glad to hear that you're endorsing Obama's plan to actually invest in community colleges. That's great.
Well, I'm for just alternatives to everything. Everyone has to go to college, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm for.
So
that doesn't necessarily mean community college. And after the meltdown, finally turning up the heat, Attorney General Eric Holder just telling the Wall Street Journal he's preparing more cases against banks stemming from the financial crisis. Already, the government's been targeting J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, for lending abuses. Julie thinks this is long overdue. Julie, I find that the Mirror should turn around on the government for letting this happen.
Wait, so you want to have the banks just be able to do whatever they want?
Who pushed them into lending to everyone with a pulse?
Who created them?
Who started the Community Reinvestment Act and turned housing away from being a goal to damn near birthright?
I'm sorry, who sold these mortgages? These tranches
you're not
of
answering my question. Who started? Guys, I want to stick this up. Who started providing the atmosphere that I'm not forgiving banks for collateralized bad mortgages? Who provided the environment that encouraged lending to everybody?
I think there was an understanding between Wall Street, who wanted to collateralize these bad debts because they sold them in tranches, and the government for providing loans to, I agree.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So look at the government. The government is very quick to point the finger.
No. Look at banks as well. Look at both. I'm with you. By the way, Obama, I think, wanted to talk about not getting rid of Fannie and Freddie and their role in the way this has been working. So I'm glad you agree with him on that, too. But I will.
No, belatedly.
Belatedly.
Yeah. Years after Dodd-Frank.
Okay, fine. But he wasn't around for that to happen. But
he was around for Dodd-Frank when it became law. And he kept them out of it.
Wait a second. You're talking about the fact that these banks collateralize these horrible loans.
Julie, you're misunderstanding.
I'm
not talking about whether banks bear some responsibility for taking a lending incentive and a push by government and putting it on steroids.
Right.
I am saying that the nicotine was first provided by the government. That's all I'm saying. So, Scottie, I'm wondering now whether going after banks years after the fact does anyone any good.
Listen, people who live in glass houses should not throw stones. And right now, I wish this administration would look at itself, like you said, with the same tenacity of investigating its own lending practices and its own practices within its departments as it's making in on these banks.
Well, Scottie, does that mean you would let, wait a minute, does that mean you would let these financial institutions off the hook or say bygones are bygones, it's 5 years, move on?
No, I'm not going to let them off the hook. By golly, the last thing I want to do is sit there and defend them. But at the same time, for Barack Obama and all of his cronies to sit there and keep pointing fingers at him, it's kind of the same reason why the farmer would never get rid of a cow, because he wants to keep milking it and sitting there and beating it and getting everything they can out of it. Barack Obama continues to hit these banks up, and the hypocrisy is he's doing the exact same thing within his own administration, hiring people like Caroline Kennedy to be the ambassador to Japan who knows nothing about it, and rewarding folks just like these banks have done. So why is he sitting there investigating them when he won't turn the finger on himself?
Didn't tank this economy. Caroline Kennedy is not too big to fail, so that we all have to bail.
Although, by the way, if she's worth at a minimum $250 million and likely $500 million.
If Caroline Kennedy lost all her revenue, I really wouldn't care. But if Bank of America did,
why is she ambassador of Japan?
She
was rewarded that because of what she raised.
I just wanted to stick to banks for the time being, but guys, I want to thank you both very, very much.